So this is the video where we're going to talk about a self-reflection exercise in relation to the power threat meaning framework. I'm going to go through the first 4 questions, explore them, encourage you to maybe think of an example of how it could apply to you. I'd say only do it if you feel safe, or only do it to the extent that you feel safe, because it could, I guess, be quite distressing if you go too far into it. So, make sure you boundary that to ensure that you're okay. But yeah, we'll go through the first 4 questions and then we'll continue on to the last 2 elements as well, which we didn't cover in the last video. I should say I've included a PDF in this lesson. It should be below this video, which you can download and print off to use to fill in. That might make it a lot easier for you. Or alternatively, if that's just a bit too much faff, maybe write on a piece of paper a similar kind of thing to what is on that sheet. I think that'll enable you to work through these questions quite easily and be able to see it all in front of you at once, which I think can be quite helpful. So first of all, what has happened to you? How is power operating in your life? Or alternatively, how has power operated in your life? It might be helpful here to think of an example where perhaps you felt powerless, you felt under threat, and ultimately without much power to do anything about it. Like I said, make sure you boundary this to keep yourself safe, but we just want a single example of when you felt that way. And like it says here, I'm not going to read these out because I read these out in the last video, but it could be in relation to relationships with other people. It could be with partner, family, friends. It could be at school, or it could be, a broader sense of feeling powerless, culturally. Maybe if culturally you are at odds with a lot of the people around you, it could be anything at all. You know better what is a good example, so I'll leave you with that. But yeah, think of a time when you feel, under threat or uncomfortable, but without much power to do much about it. Next up, and in the next box, have a think about how this affected you. What kind of threat did this pose for you? So this could be a threat to relationships that are important to you. It could be a physical threat. It could be a financial threat. Could be not so much a physical threat in terms of like physical harm, but it could be like a threat to your health. If you are diagnosed with a health condition or something like that, that is a perfectly appropriate example if that's one that is for you. Whatever it is, have a think about the effect it had on you and what kind of threat it posed to your well-being. And I'm just going to bring this up again. I don't think I read this out in the last video, but this is a list of all the things that I guess could have an impact on the sense of threat that you experience as a result of your experience. So how old you were when these things were happening, whether it was a deliberate act by the other person, whether you felt secure, whether you had people around you who believed in you, the severity of the threat and whether or not there was any escape. All these kinds of things could have an impact. So, 2 people could go through the exact same thing and feel very different levels of threat, have very different responses as a result of the thing that they're going through. And there's all kinds of environmental factors and factors relating to how a person interprets the experience that play a part in how a person responds to it and what meaning they take from it. But this list is here just to kind of help give yourself some kind of context for the thing that you're thinking about. Next up, what sense did you make out of it? What meaning did you take from these situations or experiences? And this could be what meaning in relation to, let's say, conclusions or thoughts that you have about yourself, or conclusions and thoughts you have about other people, or about the world at large, or about life in general. And these could be feeling unsafe, afraid, attacked, as though you're contaminated, or evil, lonely, hopeless, I'm unlovable, no one can be trusted, it was all my fault. Whatever it is, have a think about which of these or any really meaning that you feel applies to you and what really resonates as a result of your experience. In the 4th section, what did you have to do to survive? In other words, what kinds of threat response are you using? And as I said in the last video, a threat response is synonymous with what would often be called mental health symptoms. So whether it's going numb and feeling separate from everything, being on high alert and extremely anxious and hypervigilant about your environment, and any number of other things. This is where, yeah, you have a think about what you needed to do what you needed to do in order to survive, and perhaps how that threat response may be impacting you today. And the approach in general, you know, offers up a way of looking at mental health that suggests that ultimately these kinds of things that people can experience as mental health problems are ways in which your body is attempting to protect you, which I found quite helpful in not getting frustrated with myself if I've noticed things, because I think a big thing about mental health is that people can go through something and struggle and then get really annoyed at themselves, or decide that they're broken and there's something fundamentally wrong with them at the core of who they are. And I quite like this in the sense that it offers up an explanation, or a possible explanation, which I think cultivates a more amicable relationship with yourself. Your body's trying to protect you, is the implication of all this. Anyway, I'm rambling on too much. Have a think about the kind of threat response that you needed to bring in order to cope with that situation. I'll include another document beneath this video which has a list of threat responses, and there'll also be links on this page to all the original documents that explain this in more detail if you're interested. Then question 5, what are your strengths? What access to power resources currently do you have? Because I suppose it's not just about mapping out what's happened and how you're responding to it, it's also considering sources of power that you have in the moment that you can use as a starting point to build on. And these sources of power may include people who care for you, aspects of your identity that you feel good about, skills and beliefs, and so on, anything really. And other possible strengths in your life, past and present, could be at least loving and secure early relationships, supportive partners, family and friends, social support and a sense of belonging, having the chance to enjoy material, leisure and educational opportunities, having access to information, knowledge, alternative views, for example on mental health, positive, socially valued aspects of your identity, any skills, abilities as well, like intelligence, resourcefulness, determination and talents. And there's 4 more here as well, so bodily resources, appearance, strength, physical health, belief systems, faith, community values, that kind of thing, community practices and rituals, and connections to the nature and natural world, all things which you may find to be a source of strength and power in your life at the moment, though obviously there may well be others. And they also talk in this section about ways in which you might wish to draw from those power sources and those sources of strength and start building on them. So for example, managing your emotions by releasing, expressing, processing feelings, like writing or exercise or talking therapies or body therapies, creativity, compassion focused approaches, mindfulness and meditation, self-care, you know, like nutrition, exercise, rest, alternative therapies, using or finding relationships for emotional support, protection, validation, finding meaningful social roles and activities, other cultural rituals, ceremonies and interventions, getting involved in campaigning and activism, and finding new narratives, meanings, beliefs and values. And I suppose that could include any insights that you get from this activity, I suppose. Whatever's meaningful for you and whatever you find helpful, these are just, you know, suggestions of ways in which you might be able to build on those resources of power and strength. And then finally, what is your story? How does all this fit together? And they've said here, when you've worked through all the prompts, it might be helpful to put all this information together in the form of a narrative or story about your life, the difficulties you've faced, the effects all this has had on you, what it all meant to you, I've lost myself, the ways you've coped, and the strengths that have enabled you to survive. The story is never final or complete, and you'll probably want to revisit it. So you may wish to maybe write it out in a few sentences or a paragraph or 2 on a piece of paper, using the things that you filled in so far as a prompt in order to do that. In the document, which I've drawn from here, which is the guided activity document. 1 minute, I'm just going to check. Guided discussion document, which I'll link to below. They also talk about general patterns that they've found based on research and evidence that people, like sometimes it can be comfortable maybe if you've gone through something and you've noticed that you respond in a certain way to that. It can be comfortable maybe knowing that your trajectory, the way you've responded and the way you deal with things as a result of what you've been through, can be part of a larger pattern that other people have found themselves in. That can be quite comforting sometimes. And in the document on the Power Threat Meaning Framework overview, they talk about different patterns that have been observed. So I'll link that below as well in case you want to check that out. I suppose the comfort that that can bring is kind of similar to the comfort that a psychiatric diagnosis can bring, although this relates not just to like the symptoms, the observations and the behaviours that are happening right now, but also it can relate to things that people have been through, how they've responded to that, and how that affects them in the present moment. So it actually goes back and considers the source of it, not just the present symptoms or the behaviours that result from it.